I never thought my life would turn into the kind of story people whisper about at family gatherings. But here I am. My name's Emily, and if you've ever had someone look you in the eye and tell you that you don't matter, that you're worth nothing, then maybe you'll understand what I went through. My stepmother, Linda, made sure I heard those words loud and clear after my dad died. And the cruelest part? She said it about the one thing he left behind, his fortune. $154 million, and according to her, I wasn't entitled to a single penny. I'll never forget the way she said it. We were sitting in the massive living room of my dad's estate, the one with the floor-to-ceiling windows that overlooked the gardens he used to tend when he had the time. The sun was setting, golden light spilling across the marble floor, and there she was, Linda, leaning back on the leather sofa with a glass of wine in her hand, smiling like she'd already won. "Emily," she told me, "you need to understand something. Your father's will doesn't have your name on it. You're not getting anything. Not 1 cent." The words hit me like a punch. I wanted to argue, to scream, to tell her she was lying, but part of me froze. My dad had been sick for months before he passed. I'd been at college, trying to visit when I could, but Linda was always the gatekeeper, deciding when and how I got to see him. She'd say, "He's too tired today," or "maybe next week." And when I did see him, he looked weaker, quieter, as though something or someone was draining him. I remember whispering to him once, "Dad, are you okay? Do you want me to stay?" And he squeezed my hand with what little strength he had left and whispered back, "Don't worry, Em. Everything will be fine." But now he was gone, and Linda was telling me I was invisible in his eyes, at least legally. I tried to steady my voice as I asked, "Can I see the will? I want to read it myself." Linda smirked, swirling her wine like she was savoring the moment. "You'll see it when the lawyer reads it. Until then, don't get your hopes up." It felt like she was enjoying every second of my pain. The next few days were a blur of grief and tension. My dad's funeral was beautiful, but heavy. So many people came. Business partners, old friends, distant relatives I hadn't seen in years. I stood there in a black dress, trying to hold myself together, but I couldn't stop scanning the crowd for Linda. She was always there, front and center, acting like the grieving widow, dabbing her eyes with a silk handkerchief, but somehow always keeping one eye on me, like she wanted to make sure I stayed in my place. After the service, my dad's lawyer, Mr. Reynolds, scheduled the will reading. I don't know if you've ever been to one of those, but it's surreal. You sit in this polished office surrounded by mahogany shelves stacked with legal books, and suddenly your entire life feels like it's hanging on a few sheets of paper. Linda sat right beside me, legs crossed, pearls around her neck, looking like she owned the world. My half-brother Jason was there too. He's Linda's son from her first marriage. He's 25, a year older than me, and the golden child in her eyes. Always was. Mr. Reynolds cleared his throat and began reading. At first, it was standard stuff: debts, charities, small gifts to old friends. My heart pounded in my chest as I waited for my name. And then it came. To my daughter, Emily. My breath caught. "I leave." But before he could finish, Linda suddenly cut in. "Skip that part," she said sharply, waving her hand. Mr. Reynolds frowned. "Mrs. Carter, please. This is a formal reading." She shot him a glare, but he kept going. "To my daughter, Emily, I leave my personal journals, my first edition book collection, and—" He paused. "A trust account to be detailed separately." My head snapped up. A trust account? Linda's face flushed red, and I swear she gripped the arm of her chair so tight her knuckles turned white. Mr. Reynolds continued, moving on to Jason's part, which included properties, cars, investments, millions worth. And Linda herself, of course, was left the majority stake in my dad's company and a huge portion of his assets. When it was over, Linda wasted no time. As soon as we stepped out of that office, she cornered me in the hallway. "Don't think this changes anything," she hissed. "Those journals are sentimental junk, and that trust account? It's nothing compared to what Jason and I have. You'll never touch what's really ours." I stared at her, anger boiling in my chest. "He was my dad," I snapped, "not just yours. And if he left me something, it's because he wanted me to have it." She leaned in closer, her perfume cloying, her voice like poison. "He only did it because he felt guilty. Don't fool yourself, Emily. You were never his priority. I was." I wanted to scream, but instead, I walked away. I couldn't give her the satisfaction of seeing me break. Over the next week, I couldn't stop thinking about that trust account. What did it mean? Why hadn't Linda mentioned it before? And what was in those journals? I finally picked up the box Mr. Reynolds had given me, filled with leather-bound notebooks, some worn and faded, others newer. The first time I opened one, I swear I felt my dad's presence in the room. His handwriting, neat and careful, spilled across the pages. He wrote about his business, his struggles, his hopes for me. And then, in one entry, my heart nearly stopped. "Emily must never doubt that she is my daughter, my legacy. If she ever faces opposition from Linda or anyone else, she must know that I have secured her future. The trust is not small. It is her shield." I read that line over and over, tears blurring the ink. My dad knew. He knew Linda would try to cut me out. He knew I'd need protection. The next day, I went back to Mr. Reynolds. "Tell me about the trust," I demanded. He gave me a long, measured look, then gestured for me to sit. "Emily, your father set up a separate account in your name. It contains assets not tied to the estate Linda controls. Stocks, investments, liquid cash. It's substantial." My voice trembled. "How substantial?" He leaned back. $75 million. I felt like the air had been sucked out of the room. 75 million. My dad had given me nearly half of his fortune, hidden away where Linda couldn't touch it. When I left the office that day, I couldn't stop smiling. Not because of the money, but because my dad had believed in me, trusted me, loved me enough to fight for me even after he was gone. But of course, Linda wasn't about to let it go. The moment Linda found out about the trust, the mask she wore at the funeral cracked wide open. She didn't even try to hide her fury. One evening, I was sitting in the old study, flipping through another one of Dad's journals when the door burst open. Linda stormed in, her heels clicking against the wooden floor like gunshots. "So," she spat, eyes blazing, "you think you're clever, don't you? Sitting here, pretending you were Daddy's favorite, clinging to those worthless books." I closed the journal carefully and met her glare. "They're not worthless. They're his words, his memories. And clearly, he trusted me more than you ever thought." Her face twisted. "You don't deserve it, Emily. Not the journals, not the trust, not a dime of his money. He built that fortune with me by his side, not you." I laughed bitterly. "With you by his side? You mean after you swooped in when he was already successful? Don't rewrite history, Linda. You were never his partner in building. You were his partner in spending." Her hand twitched, like she wanted to slap me, but she restrained herself. Instead, she leaned forward, her voice low and venomous. "I will challenge that trust. I will tear it apart in court if I have to. You have no idea who you're dealing with." But here's the thing. She had no idea who she was dealing with either. I wasn't the scared little college kid she thought I was. I'd spent years watching my dad build his empire, listening to him talk about contracts, investments, and strategy. And those journals? They weren't just memories. They were blueprints. Notes about decisions, backups, even warnings about people, Linda included. One night, as I read through an entry from 2 years ago, I found something that made my blood run cold. Linda is becoming more persistent about Jason's role in the company. She wants him on the board, but I can't risk it. Jason lacks discipline, and Linda's motives are not aligned with the company's best interest. If anything happens to me, I must make sure Emily is protected from her schemes. There it was, written proof that my dad saw through her. The next time we met with Mr. Reynolds, Linda came in with her lawyer, a sharp-faced man named Gregory, who looked like he hadn't smiled in decades. They sat across from me, smug and confident. Gregory started. "We are contesting the validity of the trust. We believe Mr. Carter was under undue influence when he created it. Linda and Jason should have been the rightful beneficiaries of those assets." Mr. Reynolds adjusted his glasses calmly. "You're welcome to try, but the trust was created 5 years ago, well before Mr. Carter's illness. It is airtight." Linda snapped. "That money belongs to this family. Emily is just a child. She doesn't know how to handle it." I leaned forward, my voice steady. "I'm not a child. And that money doesn't belong to you, Linda. It belongs to me, because Dad wanted it that way." Her eyes narrowed, and I swear I could see the hatred burning in them. What followed was weeks of legal back and forth, depositions, hearings, endless paperwork. Linda fought like a cornered animal, throwing everything she had at me. She even tried to paint me as an ungrateful daughter who barely visited her father. She claimed I was reckless, irresponsible, unfit to manage such a fortune. But every time, Dad's journals and Mr. Reynolds' testimony backed me up, and the more Linda pushed, the more desperate she looked. Jason, meanwhile, played his part as the spoiled son. He showed up in flashy suits, smirking at me across the courtroom, like he thought this was all some kind of game. But he didn't know what I knew. One night, flipping through yet another journal, I found an entry about Jason. Jason has been siphoning money from the company accounts. Small amounts, but enough to raise concern. If Linda knew, she'd cover it up. If shareholders knew, they'd lose faith. I've documented everything. I sat back, stunned. My dad had kept records of Jason's theft. And if that ever came out, Jason's golden boy image would shatter. The next hearing, I brought it up quietly with Mr. Reynolds. He raised an eyebrow but nodded. "We'll keep this in our pocket," he said. And then came the day that changed everything. The courtroom was packed. Linda sat on one side, her pearls gleaming, Jason beside her looking smug. I sat on the other, clutching one of Dad's journals like a lifeline. Linda's lawyer droned on. About undue influence, about how I was manipulating the memory of a dying man. And then it was our turn. Mr. Reynolds stood, calm as ever. "Your Honor, I would like to submit into evidence a series of journals written by Mr. Carter. In them, he expresses his explicit concern about Linda's motives and Jason's behavior. He clearly states his intent to protect his daughter Emily through the trust. These journals are dated years before his illness." Gasps rippled through the room as excerpts were read aloud. And then came the bombshell. "In addition," Mr. Reynolds continued, "Mr. Carter documented evidence of financial misconduct by Jason Carter, who had been siphoning company funds. These records are detailed and supported by account. Statements." Jason's face drained of color. He shifted in his seat, stammering, "That's not true. He's lying." But it was too late. The evidence was there in black and white, my father's meticulous handwriting exposing everything. Linda shot to her feet, furious. "This is outrageous. Those journals could be fabricated. She probably forged them." The judge banged his gavel. "Order! Mrs. Carter, sit down." I watched as the walls of Linda's empire began to crumble. Her perfect image, her grip on my dad's legacy, Jason's spotless reputation, it was all slipping through her fingers. When the hearing ended, the trust was upheld. My inheritance was safe. Jason's misconduct was referred to the company board, and Linda's credibility was shredded. But she wasn't finished. Not yet. That night, I found a letter slipped under my door at the estate. No envelope, just folded paper. It was Linda's handwriting. You think you've won, but you have no idea what I'm capable of. Watch your back. I stared at those words, my heart pounding. For the first time, I wondered if this was more than just a legal battle. Was she threatening me? The house felt colder. After that, every creak in the hallway, every shadow in the corner made me uneasy. I started locking my bedroom door at night. And then, one evening, I found something that chilled me to the bone. Another journal entry from Dad, dated only weeks before he passed. Linda has been pressuring me to change. The will. She's desperate, unpredictable. If anything happens to me, Emily must be cautious. I don't trust Linda. She is dangerous. Dangerous. My dad used that word. And now, as I stared at her letter, I finally understood what he meant. This wasn't just about money anymore. It was about survival. The night I read that entry, I couldn't sleep. I lay in my bed staring at the ceiling, the words replaying over and over. She is dangerous. My father had seen it before anyone else, and now I was living. Linda wasn't just greedy, she was unpredictable. And with her warning note still burning in my mind, I started to wonder, what exactly was she willing to do to get what she wanted? The next morning, I woke to the sound of raised voices downstairs. Jason and Linda were arguing, loud enough that the entire house could hear. I crept halfway down the staircase and listened. "You embarrassed me in court," Jason shouted. "You let her destroy me in front of everyone. My name is ruined, Mom." Linda snapped back. "Quiet, Jason. Do you think I don't know that? Do you think I don't realize what's at stake? That girl has everything now, and we're left with scraps. But I won't let it end here." Jason's voice dropped, lower, tense. "Then what do you plan to do?" There was a pause. And then Linda said something that sent a chill down my spine. "Whatever it takes." I backed up the stairs quietly, heart hammering in my chest. My father's warning wasn't paranoia, it was prophecy. Over the next few days, strange things started happening. First, my car wouldn't start. The mechanic later told me someone had tampered with the engine. Then, one night, as I was leaving the office, I noticed a black SUV trailing me for several blocks before disappearing into the night. I couldn't prove anything, but I knew. Linda was behind it. I confided in Mr. Reynolds. He listened, carefully, then sighed. "Emily, I don't want to alarm you, but I believe your father prepared for this. He asked me years ago to hold on to certain contingency documents, things that would come into play only if Linda tried to cross the line." I leaned forward, desperate. "What kind of documents?" He opened a safe in his office and pulled out a sealed envelope. My father's handwriting was on the front. "For Emily, if Linda becomes a threat." My hands shook as I tore it open. Inside was a letter, written in his familiar script. "My dearest Emily, if you are reading this, then my fears about Linda have come true. She is not to be trusted. Enclosed are copies of legal documents, photographs, and evidence that I've kept hidden. They detail financial fraud, hidden accounts, and even connections Linda has to people I would not consider safe. If she attempts to harm you or challenge your inheritance, give this to the authorities. And Emily, no matter what, do not let her intimidate you. You are stronger than she knows." Along with the letter were several documents, bank statements, offshore accounts, even photographs of Linda meeting with a man I didn't recognize in shady locations. My dad had been watching her, documenting her every move. I swallowed hard. My father had essentially left me a weapon. The next time Linda tried to corner me, I was ready. She showed up at the estate unannounced, striding into the study like she still owned the place. "Emily," she said, her voice deceptively calm. "This feud between us has gone on long enough. Why don't you just hand over half of the trust? We can make peace. Jason can have his reputation back, and you can still walk away with more money than you'll ever need." I folded my arms. "You mean you walk away with half? And I'm supposed to just forget about the threats? The stalking? The tampering with my car?" Her eyes flickered, just for a second, but enough. I pulled out the envelope Dad had left me and laid it on the desk between us. "You should know something, Linda. Dad didn't just leave me money. He left me protection. He knew what you were capable of. And he documented everything. Fraud, theft, your shady connections. If anything happens to me, or if you try to push this any further, the police will get all of it." For the first time, Linda looked rattled. Her face paled, her lips pressed into a thin line. "You're bluffing," she whispered. "Try me," I said firmly. She stared at me for what felt like an eternity before finally turning on her heel and storming out. But deep down, I knew it wasn't over. The following week, Jason's world began to unravel. The company board investigated the evidence of his theft, and within days, he was removed. Shareholders called for accountability, and his name became synonymous with scandal. Paparazzi caught him leaving bars drunk. Fights with Linda were leaked to tabloids. It was all spiraling out of control. I should have felt triumphant. In a way, I did. But there was still a knot in my stomach. Because Linda wasn't the kind of person who gave up. She was the kind of person who retaliated. That retaliation came one stormy night. I was home alone, the wind howling outside, rain pelting against the windows. I was curled up on the couch with one of Dad's journals when the power suddenly went out. The house plunged into darkness. At first, I thought it was just the storm. But then I heard it. A creak on the back porch. I froze. My phone was in my hand, and I quickly dialed 911, whispering my address to the operator. As I crouched low, clutching the journal like a shield, I heard the unmistakable sound of a door handle turning. Footsteps echoed through the kitchen. Slow. Measured. "Emily." A voice called softly. Linda's voice. I pressed myself against the wall, heart hammering so loud I thought she could hear it. "I know you're here," she whispered. "Why don't we talk just the two of us? No lawyers, no judges. You and me." The floor creaked as she moved closer. I could see her silhouette in the faint glow of lightning through the windows. She was holding something, a glint of metal, a knife. I swallowed hard, praying the police would get there in time. "Your father never loved you the way he loved me," Linda hissed. "You were just a burden, a reminder of a life he didn't want. But me? I was everything to him. This fortune, this house. It's mine. You should have walked away when you had the chance." My breath caught, but before she could take another step, red and blue lights flashed outside. Sirens pierced the storm. Linda spun around, startled. The front door burst open, and officers flooded the room, shouting commands. Within seconds, Linda was disarmed and pinned to the ground, screaming and thrashing like a wild animal. They hauled her away. She locked eyes with me and spat. "This isn't over!" But in that moment, I knew it was. At the police station later, I handed over the documents my father had prepared. Fraud, offshore accounts, photographs. It was enough to bury her. The detective looked at me with a mix of pity and admiration. "Your father was a smart man. He knew she'd come after you, and he made sure you'd be ready." Driving home that night, I felt an overwhelming mix of grief and relief. My dad was gone, but he was still protecting me. His journals, his trust, his love, they were all proof that I wasn't alone. But even as I sat in the quiet of the estate, surrounded by his words, I couldn't shake the question lingering in my mind. How far would Linda go from behind bars? And was this truly the end of her, or just the beginning of something darker? Linda was gone, at least for the moment, locked behind bars while the charges stacked higher and higher. Fraud, attempted assault, conspiracy, it was all there. For the first time in months, I finally felt like I could breathe. But peace, I soon learned, doesn't come easily when you've lived in the shadow of someone like her. Jason, humiliated and disgraced, had gone silent. Rumor had it he left town, fleeing to some condo in Miami that hadn't yet been seized. I didn't care. I didn't want to hear his name ever again. The company had cut ties, the press had torn him apart, and Linda's empire of illusions had collapsed overnight. But even with both of them out of my daily life, I still woke up in the middle of the night, sweating, expecting to see Linda's face at my door, whispering those venomous words again. It was Mr. Reynolds who helped me through it. One afternoon, as we sat in his office reviewing the final paperwork that secured my trust, he leaned back and said, "Emily, I've known your father for 25 years. He loved you more than anything. Don't let Linda's poison convince you otherwise. He left you more than money. He left you his faith." I nodded, holding back tears, because that was what hurt the most. Not the battles in court, not the threats, not even the night she came into my home with a knife. What hurt was how close she'd come to convincing me that I wasn't enough, that my dad hadn't loved me the way he did. But then I'd open another journal, and there he was, his handwriting, his thoughts, his heart laid bare on the page. He wrote about my first piano recital, about the time I fell off my bike and scraped my knees, about the pride he felt when I got into college. He even wrote about the nights he couldn't sleep because he worried whether I knew how much he cared. I realized then, Linda could take a lot from me, but she could never take that. The trial came fast. Linda stood in court, her once polished appearance now a shadow of itself. The pearls were gone, replaced by an orange jumpsuit. Her lawyer tried every trick in the book, pleas, excuses, even claims of mental instability. But the evidence was overwhelming. The day the verdict was read, I was there. The courtroom was silent as the judge delivered the sentence. 15 years in prison with no chance of parole for the first 10. Linda turned to look at me one last time. Her eyes were cold, lifeless almost, but there was still that spark of rage, that refusal to let go. For a moment, I thought she might scream again, tell me it wasn't over. But instead, she just smirked, as if she knew something I didn't. And then she was led away. Afterward, reporters swarmed me outside the courthouse. Cameras flashed, microphones shoved in my face. "Emily, how does it feel to see justice served? Emily, what will you do with the inheritance? Emily, do you have any words for your stepmother?" I kept my answer simple. My father's legacy isn't about money. It's about love, and no one can take that from me. The days that followed felt strange. For the first time in years, the estate was quiet, free of Linda's presence. I spent my mornings walking through the gardens Dad once tended, my evenings curled up with his journals. The more I read, the more I realized he hadn't just written for himself. He'd written for me. To guide me, to remind me, to prepare me for a life without him. One night, I came across a final entry, dated only a week before he passed. "My greatest fear is leaving Emily in a world where Linda's influence could harm her. But my greatest hope is that Emily will rise above it, She has my strength, my resilience, my heart. If she is reading this now, then I am gone. But Emily, know this. You are not defined by wealth or by battles with those who envy you. You are defined by the love you give, the courage you show, and the truth you carry forward. That is my real legacy. I cried that night, not out of grief but out of gratitude, because in those words, I felt him with me again. Months passed. Jason never resurfaced. Linda sat in prison, her threats reduced to echoes. And me? I decided to honor my dad the way he would have wanted. I used part of the trust to start a foundation in his name, funding scholarships for kids who had dreams but no means to reach them, investing in community projects that built something real, something lasting. Every time I cut a check, every time I saw a child's face light up with opportunity, I felt my father smiling. But life has a way of leaving you with scars, even when you've survived the worst. Sometimes, late at night, I still hear Linda's words in my head. Dripping with venom, you don't deserve it. You were never his priority. And then I open another journal, and I read my father's words, written with love, steady and true. Emily is my legacy. Emily must never doubt how much she means to me. That's when I know the truth. I may have inherited money, I may have inherited property, stocks, and trusts, but the real inheritance, the one that matters, was my father's unwavering love and belief in me. Linda tried to erase that. She tried to rewrite the story, to steal what was never hers, but in the end, she lost everything. And me? I walked away not just with wealth, but with wisdom. I learned that people can be ruthless, greedy, even dangerous. But I also learned that love, real love, leaves behind a power no one can touch. So if you ever find yourself doubting your worth because of what someone else tells you, remember this. Their words don't define you. Their greed doesn't diminish you. And their hate can never erase the love that's truly yours. My stepmother swore I'd get nothing from my dad's will. She sat there so sure, so smug, certain that she had won. But what happened left everyone shocked. Because in the end, I didn't just get the inheritance. I got something far more valuable. I got the truth. And the truth set me free.